I have noticed commonality among them, and that if I could sum up the psychedelic experience in one word, if you had to, it's love. That the purpose to life, the only purpose, the only thing that has true meaning is love. And that's universal. That has been the universal lesson I have taken from them.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today is David Mursky. He practiced commercial litigation as a trial lawyer in New York for over 25 years before relocating to Arizona. David has been the CEO of Sibannac since 2017, where he is spearheading the company's entry into the plant medicine and consciousness sector. The company has launched the Starwalker Cafe, a multimedia platform incorporating education, wellness tourism, and plant medicine products. David, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Good, good. So what was the catalyst that moved you away from law and then off to Arizona?
Wow, that's a great question. I I kind of got, I would want to say, forced into law a little bit. So my wife and I met very early in life in college at New York University, and I never really had a desire or career choice really picked out. And then when we graduated, my wife was dead set on going to law school. And then I kind of really didn't know what else to do. And I really didn't want her to go without me. And if she was going to be a lawyer, okay, I'll be a lawyer. And we were fortunate enough to have the ability to be able to go together, really just married out of college. So we were, barely 22. And so that's it. We decided to go. But I never really had the passion for it. So we got out of school, got into the workforce. And, the thing with law, actually, and maybe this is interesting for people kind of coming up in the world, it's hard to get a job. You find you graduate from school and then you're looking for something, and then economics are reality, and you have to kind of get a job somewhere. And so, well, I'll take a job. This is the only law firm offering me a job, so for now I'll do it. Then you find you kind of get pigeonholed, and then you probably didn't really love the field you got into specifically, but and then you get a little bit of experience, and then your only second job is kind of a more experienced step in the position that you really didn't want in the first place. And then there you are, off you go, and you're sort of on the road. And now you're a lawyer. And, I saw ahead of me about 10 years where attorneys were kind of becoming partners. Then you kind of have the kids, you've got saddled with the mortgage. And all of a sudden you look back and it's too late to kind of get off the wheel that you found yourself on. And I knew at that point that I did not want to become one of those lawyers or one of those people. And I had an opportunity. My family had slowly migrated from the East Coast down to Florida for a bit, and then to Arizona. And so I had a business opportunity with family, and that ultimately led me to make the jump and pull up all the roots from New York and move out west, as they say, and kind of never look back. And so I left the law behind formally, although I have found that I have integrated that, like, about 10 years of solid practice and some trial work into whatever it is, the new endeavors that I was going to encounter. And that was sort of the catalyst. It was really more like, let me get out of this and find a new life.
Yeah. And I
You
guess
know,
the work experience in law is always handy if you're setting up businesses and stuff like that. Even if you're not doing
it's
it all,
always.
you've got the knowledge. You've make things make sense. As yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and I practiced for 10 years. So, you kind of know the lay of the land. You learn the business end of things. And for people saying, like, I might want to go to law school, but I don't really want to practice, but the experience will be good. I really don't put a lot of stock in that. I think you really have to work it. You've got to learn it. You graduate law school, you don't know anything. And no matter what country you're in, I know that it's the same. So I really did put in almost a decade of solid work, and that definitely has served me, no doubt. And I wouldn't change a thing. I'm glad I did it. I'm still proud to be a lawyer. I keep my license active, but I'm definitely happy to be in plant medicine, as opposed to the courtroom, which probably couldn't be any further away from that initial career. So that's interesting how life kind of brings changes to you.
Yeah, yeah. So, when did you first experience plant medicines, like in New York or and when you moved to Arizona?
No, it's really interesting. I was not a user of substances, let's say, virtually for my entire life. So very, very new. Even to this day, I'm not really an alcohol drinker. Will drink a little bit socially. I never drink if I'm in my home, not even a beer, nothing. It's just not really my thing. So it's interesting that in 2017, that I jumped headfirst into plant medicine, and that being ayahuasca, that some people are increasingly becoming more familiar with, but it was a full-on just dive in, and I'll say that really the impetus for that was a long legal battle, which is interesting as an attorney, that I had really as a client. So juxtapose, the roles, and I went through over 6 years of a legal battle that really left me really drained in every way possible. Not really knowing what to do for work and professionally. It left me drained financially. So life kind of threw me through a loop. And then I had a couple of friends who were considering ayahuasca for various reasons. And I never really put the two things together. But when I agreed to do it, and we eventually did it in February of 17, that experience directly addressed the trauma, the stress, and the pain that I had been enduring over the previous 6+ years, and really, really kind of set me on my way. And that experience alone was the impetus for getting into plant medicine, although it didn't really fully develop into a career until the last couple of years in terms of real focus on psychedelics. So it was a gradual process, but I think one that began out of that situation and then sort of gradually over the next 5 or so years.
So that first experience with your friends was that just an introduction to it and you thought, okay, I'm going to try this again? Or did anything specific happen that time that you're thinking, wow, this is what I've been looking for? Or what? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect, right? Someone who had never had experience with any psychedelics, no plant medicines, no experiences socially or recreationally, like with MDMA, which is another substance, not a true psychedelic, but one that a lot of people know, certainly at a younger age, kind of like in the party scene, so to speak. So I had no expectations. However, they ask you to prepare an intention, a real focused intention when you go into a plant medicine experience. And my intention for my first ayahuasca journey was to kind of get rid of the anger that had built inside of me over the years and had become prevalent. And I really didn't know the extent to which that anger was hurting me, but I knew subconsciously that this was something I wanted to address in the experience. And lo and behold, the experience was directly focused on the anger that had built up over the previous years, and one that allowed me to come really symbolically, if you will, but in the experience, it felt as though I was encountering people that I sort of had identified as the face of my anger, and allowed me to come face to face with them. And it enabled me miraculously to experience the anger and the pain that these people were experiencing, which put them in a position to be able to take that anger out on me, which gave me a lot of pain, of course. But in this experience, I was able to step out of the ego driven um, three-dimensional reality we live in, kind of step out of the identity of who I thought I was, and to look at these people as sympathetic beings, and to put aside the pain and anger that I felt, and to actually not only identify with the pain that they were feeling, but to feel sympathy and to feel compassion for their pain and feeling badly for them. And I remember in the experience having a conversation with them and saying, it's okay. I understand why you're doing this to me. I understand what is causing you to inflict pain upon me. And I feel compassion for you. And I'm sorry for the pain that you're going through, not focusing at all on the pain that I had experienced. And being able to step outside of that um, relieved me to like beyond words, where I felt a tremendous weight had been lifted. And when I came out of the experience, I felt so light that this weight was now gone. I didn't have to carry this burden of anger. I realized intuitively that it was causing me to have that anger was causing me such pain and stress. And so I forgave myself really of that burden and was able to put it down. And that didn't it didn't register that that was going to be the new path in my life, but certainly that was the moment that it really kicked in that I was going to be pursuing plant medicine as a my own life journey from that point on.
Guys, if you're on a path of developing your intuition, and I know you are, that's why you're listening here, then the Neurovisor is a tool worth checking out. It uses light and sound to guide your brain into deeper states of awareness, helping you quiet the noise, tap into your inner knowing, and strengthen your intuitive muscle. And who doesn't want that? There's no pills, no fluff, just 11 minutes a day to reset your mind and reconnect with your instincts. I've bought myself one last Christmas and I've added it to my daily practice, and the shifts are real. This is not a paid ad, but if you use the link in the show notes for more information, I do receive a small percentage of the purchase price. I highly recommend you check it out. Wow. So how long did this whole experience last for, roughly?
So it's probably let's say 6 hours, more or less. Usually, you'll get there. It takes place at night. So you kind of start probably 9 o'clock or so at night, and you're probably then going until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, like actively, and it varies for certain people, of course. But yeah, so it's a very long experience, and one where I think enables you to encounter a lot of different things over the course of that time. I like to say that ayahuasca, in particular, is one of many plant medicines and psychedelics that one could partake in. That ayahuasca almost is like a mini life journey in and of itself, where you can experience many different things over the course of that. And like, my feeling is that you kind of go through a lifetime in the journey of about that, 7 or so hours.
And that's what I
Very,
was
very interesting.
gonna
Mhm.
ask you. Did it seem like 6 hours, or did it seem like much shorter or longer?
So it's hard to say. It definitely didn't seem like 6 or 7 hours. But for a lot of it, you are very cognizant of your presence, of where you are. It's not like a 7 hour out of body experience where you kind of then return and not know where you've been. Um, DMT, dimethyltryptamine, being the real visual psychedelic component of ayahuasca, if you take that on its own, which gives you a completely different experience, but such an intense one, depending on the form, you could have an experience where you are completely out of body and not know what time has transpired and come back in the course of 5 minutes. Some people describing months have gone by. That might be an extreme, but certainly not knowing at all what time has transpired, which really goes to the question of what is time, where does it come from, how we experience time, a very deep question. But in ayahuasca, over the hours, I think it's kind of an up and down, in and out sort of experience where you will have kind of visions and experiences, but there are certainly times where you'll have to use the bathroom. And then, so that you have some sense of the general time, but it certainly feels like so much has happened in the experience that it's odd. Like you wouldn't think normally like hours have passed, but you do have you have awareness. There's no doubt. You do.
Mm. And so you're saying during your first experience, you were able to visualize these people who, in your mind for the previous 6 years, had been this thorn in your side, causing you this anguish, pain, anger, etc. So you could visualize them in your mind or whatever, and you saw what they were going through. You saw, because they say hurt people hurt people. So you could see their hurt and you could see why they were hurting you. And so that bigger picture then changed the energy dynamic between you and them. And is that roughly what happened?
Absolutely. So visually, it's kind of like you're having a daydream almost. And this, like I always want to say, this is my subjective personal experiences. People have unbelievable encounters with people, with beings, entities, all kinds of different things in the ayahuasca experience. I've had certain of those things in my psychedelic journeys, but this experience was more like kind of like a daydream where you would be visualizing coming together with these people. And it was a very close encounter where we were like almost touching heads, like three people just like coming together in a very tight group, almost like you were huddled. And the feeling, though, was visceral. The feeling I had was it's like if you're speaking with someone, but you actually take on the internal feelings of that person and you're internalizing it, where you know innately that, oh my goodness, you're feeling this type of extreme pain. As you said, this hurt that's causing you to then put hurt on me. But it wasn't like visualizing it. I was actually feeling it. It's so indescribable. And it was the intensity of that feeling that led me to the conclusion that I understand the pain now that you're feeling and experiencing. And it was a very heavy feeling. And so allowing me to process that allowed me to identify like the pain and the anger I was feeling, and really to, it's to make a decision that I didn't have to experience that any longer. And so the gift I think that psychedelics can give one is to be able to step out of something and so easily identify something that you had been dealing with that was so difficult, but being able to discard it almost like in just a choice, just to kind of blow it away and to step outside of it and not to sort of judge it, but to understand that this is something that is not serving you. And it takes nothing more than an affirmative choice to put that away. And as easy as that was, I never would have been able to identify it and discard it the way I was able to do without this experience. So in general, like when people say you've done psychedelics or ayahuasca, it's like experiencing 10,000 hours of therapy in a night. I can completely understand, what is referred to when people say that, because it's so easy to do once you have gone through the experience. And that's all I can say.
Yeah. So without getting too much into specific details, because the issue was with two other people, I gather, that for 6 years of pain. The next time you physically encountered them, you were in their presence, or I presume you've since then you have been. Look, was there much of a change, like in their attitude to you, or was it just your attitude to them that had changed?
So these were really like attorneys that were really the face of this. And so I would say that it really didn't have anything to do specifically with them as individuals, although I was very tapped into what they must have been experiencing and choices they have made in their life to be able to participate in this kind of a situation. But really, in the end, the focus was on me letting go of my anger because that is really the only thing that was relevant. So to feel compassion for someone that causes you pain is life changing, but the change really happened within me. That was the focus. I never had an interaction with these people after that, and it wasn't required. And I just felt the relief from the situation after I had been able to process that. And that's all that I really needed. And no longer focused on these people that were hurting me. Like they were just completely irrelevant at that point because the anger was gone. And so as I came out of the situation, I didn't even think about them ever again.
So I guess I'm getting a picture here of an electromagnet. So when you electrify this piece of metal, it becomes magnetic and you're attached. And this experience has allowed that a disconnection of that electricity. And so the energy is no longer flowing into it. So you've just come disconnected from it. And like you say, you discarded it. It's gone. Like there's no, and we're not even thinking about it anymore because it's no longer, it's almost like you had this 100-pound weight magnetically attached to you and you've been carting it around for 6 years and you're getting angry because it's fucking not fun. And now it's just the charge is let go and it's just dropped off. And now you're walking around normal. And before long, you forget that you were even carting that thing around. Does that sound how it?
It's exactly right. I think it's a great way to frame it. We just don't understand. We feel like we are compelled to pick up these things, these weights, and without realizing the stress that they could cause us and how easy it's actually be to put it down, and that we have all of the power to focus our intention on what it is that we want. And we have complete control over that. And it seems like when you're in the situation that you have this human response that we frequently devolve into of defensiveness and revenge and all of these real basal emotions that like a plant medicine experience can take you out and give you the option and say you're not forced to see the situation like this. There is another way. And you don't have to feed with your energy the things that you have chosen to feed until this point. There is another way. There are options, and you can put it down. And what is so miraculous is when you make these life changing discoveries, how easy they actually are. When you get to the point to make the decision that it's no longer required, and as you said expertly, I just decide to put my energy into something else and I'll feed something else. And and you ask yourself after that, why didn't I do this so long ago? But you just don't have the tools all the time to be able to step outside and see it from that other perspective. And that's kind of the gift that I was given. But in reality, these are tools, these plant medicines. So I always like people to understand that it's not the medicines that are doing it, it's you. You're doing it for yourself. Of course, you might not have been able to without the experience, but the gift that you're giving is to yourself. It's self-love ultimately that is enabling you to make the change. So when people come out of it and they say, "Oh, thank you for giving me that experience." Yes, of course, people are it's the most rewarding thing to be able to introduce people to this kind of new way of life and these experiences, but the changes come from you. And so I always want people to retain that power, that the good that they've brought about for themselves is because they made the choice to go into the medicine. They made the choice to do the hard work and then ultimately are reaping the benefit from it. And they, meaning the individual, you deserve all the credit for all the goodness that comes of that.
Yeah. So how long after this first experience was it before you decided to head on this new venture? Where you were going to assist people to have the benefit that you'd had.
It took years. I did not have my, so that was 2017. I didn't have a second ayahuasca experience for 4 years. That's ayahuasca, so it's very particular. And I say to people that are considering plant medicines, it's a calling. I never recommend these things for people. If you're called, then I'm all about giving you the information, and I'll go down all of the rabbit holes with you, and we'll talk about what to expect. Um, but I had experienced other psychedelics really over COVID because as we all know, right, the world was shut down. Um, I'm sure you had a similar experience in Australia, right? I mean, let's generally worldwide, everyone was going through more or less the same. And so it gave me two things: the access to different compounds and medicines, which I didn't have before. So I was working with some people that had access. And then COVID gave me the opportunity to be able to take all kinds of time off and start to experience other types of medicines. And it was sort of the breadth and experiences of those different psychedelics that ultimately put me onto the path. But it wasn't until really the last 2 years, I would say, that I have been directly focused on developing a framework as a business model to be able to bring these experiences to others.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, because I have talked to some people and they've had it once and then they've just like boom, like, oh, I've got to run around and help others get into this or whatever. So I was curious how that went for you.
Yeah.
Um, so if you went back to practicing law now, like, would you see things kind of differently?
Um, I would not go back to practicing litigation, not in the general sense. Just wasn't for me. So I would probably, I would very much focus on something that brought me joy, something that I love to do, that I'd love to get up and look forward to doing on a daily basis. I don't know that that really exists. Interestingly, there is a growing body of law in psychedelics now as these things are proliferating not only across the US, but in different countries and throughout the world. I'm not sure that's developed enough, but it's something interesting that I would consider or at least maybe consult on. Like for instance, cannabis, like cannabis law has really become a very interesting part of law that's developed in the US, where mostly like all the states are either have medicinal or recreational marijuana at this point. So had I wound the clock back and maybe focused on that as I was practicing and had an opportunity, I might have done that. I really look at law as I just kind of maybe met the law at the wrong time. I would actually love to be a judge. That's something I could go back and do. But the actual practice of law, developing clients, the financial realities of law, just not really being a good business, and a lot of lawyers really being unhappy and feeling stuck. I don't think that's the life I would go back into. But if I could divorce myself from like the economics of it, I would probably love to be a judge, actually. Um, and so, who knows? If I had a mentor, which I really lacked, a real mentor that really could have taught me the law in a different way than I experienced, it could have been a different situation, and who knows? So everything is not forever in life, and so I'm forever grateful to be a lawyer, and to be able to use that to whatever extent is relevant today. Um, but I definitely go through life now in a much more actively mindful way to identify what it is that I love to do that gets me excited. And had I known that when I was younger, I might not have decided to go into law in the first place, or I would have made a more active decision and I would have probably I would have identified what it is that I wanted to do and not just rely on sending out resumes and the regular uh, practice to try and find a job. I would have been more proactive and realized that this is my life, that I was, just kind of bandying about maybe a little too carelessly without more daily purpose.
Yeah.
So I've learned purpose.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like, and you said you got married at 22. I got married at 20, and absolutely loved it. Like we've been married just a little over 40 years now, and
Beautiful.
loving it. And it's great. But yeah, I hear you. You get that first job, and you stick with it, and you keep going, and we our vision was so small back then, to what as we get older we start to see things a little differently, and yeah, you get a mortgage and kids come, and you as one of my sons now describes it, because he's in a very responsible high paying job, and you got golden handcuffs, and it's like these golden handcuffs tie you into these situations, and yeah,
They
it's
do. And as a young lawyer, I didn't have even the benefit of the golden handcuffs. I wasn't getting a job that was going to give me any handcuffs. I was barely making it. As you spend all this time and money, and I was really, underpaid, as I saw it getting out of law school. So yeah, I think, but I definitely had friends that were the subject of the golden handcuffs at big firms. And I ended up doing work where I was actually in court. So the benefit of working in small firms where maybe you're not making that kind of money is that you get a lot of experience, though. So I was actually doing things in court where I would encounter colleagues, friends of mine, who got the big law firm jobs, but they were there in the same courtroom I was, but carrying someone else's bag or sitting in the audience and taking notes. And I was actually doing things. So there's absolutely the trade-off. And those people, a lot of them experience a lot of burnout and didn't really make it, too far in that career because the money only goes so far, and it doesn't really bring happiness. And there are a lot of lawyers, unfortunately, who still to this day are kind of just stuck, and a lot of people stuck because you make enough money where you can't make these changes. So, the real freedom of having nothing is something that goes underestimated a lot. When you have nothing, you have freedom. And that freedom is so empowering. I can go anywhere, I can do anything, I can try something. And certainly when you're young and before the kids come, I encourage young people to get out in the world, go find something. You really don't know what it is that is going to interest you. And, use that time to really be young where you have all this strength and you don't need to sleep and you can just go devour the world. When you get, I mean, being married young is, but we stayed in school. So I think being married young was a great thing too. I've always been so happy to be married and have my wife and partner for all this time, and growing that relationship like over these years in a way people don't understand. I mean, I've loved that, but it does make it hard to kind of travel and leave. And I'm going to go here. You just make different choices. So there are consequences to our choices. So I would say don't jump into things that quickly when you're young. If I could give advice to people, which as a parent, and this is a little bit of a segue, like my kids are very different from me in a lot of ways. Like I have a daughter and two sons. My two sons are more into the arts. Both of them play music, but one is more of like an actor. And I have one son who's a full-time physician. He's in school, but physician, musician. My wife's family are doctors, physicians. So I don't relate to music. Don't relate to the arts. I never would have acted, but I know enough now to not project my wants and desires onto my children, that that's not my job at all, and their lives are not my life. And so my job is just to encourage them, to support them, make sure they're making good choices in the realm of choices that they're making for themselves. And it's not my business. And I'm very happy for them to pursue whatever their passions are, because I know that I came from a position that I did not do that for myself. And so I definitely don't want to take that from them. So that's something I've definitely learned.
Yeah, interesting. And
Yeah.
have any of the children done any plant medicines or anything like that?
No, nor my
No.
wife really. And so that's really also very, very interesting. As I said, I don't recommend these things. And the biggest example of that is my family does not participate. They do not feel, they are maybe scared a little bit. They don't feel the need to do it. My wife is a bit of a natural manifester, so she's kind of a magical person that has these sort of innate abilities that people are able to tap into through psychedelics, but interestingly, has no interest, doesn't want to do it. And that's perfectly fine with me. I like it that way. It gives me, a place to sort of be on my own. I also, as I'm thinking about this, I don't recommend spouses to do psychedelic journeys together because they're very distracting. You'd be so concerned with the experience, what is your spouse going through, that it would take away from your own experience. So this is something that, although it's a major focus of my life, that experientially I keep for myself. And I think it's wonderful that this is not for everybody, as I started out saying. It is a growing thing, but definitely not for everybody. So if you're called, you know it. If you're not, God bless you. You don't need that in your life, or not at this time. And that's the way it is. You have to understand that life is a very big place for people to participate in all the different ways they choose.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you asked that question. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, interesting to know, and I can relate to a lot of that too. And
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, very much. My
yeah.
boys would be into like are into it, but my wife is no, she's always been very intuitive, and she has her own thing, and she's like, oh, what do I need that for? So yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, apart from ayahuasca, like other types of journeys, have you had any particular experiences with other substances that are noteworthy of mentioning?
Oh, many miraculous, miraculous journeys. And just for people to note, so what I'm doing now is I've never been on social media. I still don't post anything personally on social media outside of my psychedelic experiences. So just in the last couple of months, I decided that I was called to get in front of the camera, which is why I'm doing podcasts and talking to people like you to get this message out and talk about what these psychedelic journeys are, different experiences. Number one, what are the different psychedelics and how those experiences, how they can be different from each other, and sort of the nuts and bolts of what actually goes on in the journey. And then the second part of my content is what lessons I have learned, what I've taken from them, and how I've integrated them in different ways into daily life. And that's really the purpose. So they all work very differently. Obviously, chemically, some of them work differently than others. So the way they interact, their mechanics of action are different. And the way you process them as an individual can be different. And you may find with a breadth of these that this one is better for me. I would prefer this over that. I like this experience, or I've learned more from this. That's all perfectly well and good. But they may all in their own way contribute differently. I have noticed though a commonality among them, and that if I could sum up the psychedelic experience in one word, if you had to, it's love. That the purpose to life, the only purpose, the only thing that has true meaning is love. And that's universal. That has been the universal lesson I have taken from them. So, as I was saying, over COVID, I have experienced psilocybin, the magic mushrooms. I have done the ayahuasca compound DMT, which is in one of the leaves that's used in ayahuasca to make the brew on its own in different forms, in smoked forms. I have done MDMA, like the so-called ecstasy, but really pure MDMA, not mixed in with sort of the party additives that typically you find in there, and LSD, acid, kind of the old school, throwback, these party drugs. I have done that. There are a number that I haven't done yet, so I can speak on what I have done, but just to let people know, people that are experiencing severe pain or addiction or depression and PTSD, I think while all of the psychedelics can successfully treat some of these conditions, some are known to do so more successfully in a better way than others. And some are natural, like ibogaine, an African shrub, has been unbelievably successful in this regard. Um, and then there's a bufo, which is a plant, a secretion from the Sonoran desert toad. So there are some that comes from frogs, and there are different frog species that have varying psychedelic compounds in their glands that they secrete. So I haven't done a couple of these, which is something I'm very interested in. I do have the opportunity to, so I'm looking to do that to kind of expand my experiences as well. But so I have the mushroom experiences, LSD, and dimethyltryptamine, and MDMA. Like those are really kind of the breadth of what I've experienced, and they're all very different. Um, yeah, they work differently and have some profound experiences that I talk about because they're all individual in their own right, and just I can get into any of these experiences. It's whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The one bit of advice I can give to our 14-year-old listeners out there, if there's any, probably not, but um, don't go out and do mushrooms on your own. I did mushrooms twice when I was 14. My brother used to rent this barn on acreage and he'd converted it into a bit of a house, makeshift, had this rusty corrugated iron roof that you looked up at and it wasn't lined or anything. And he had gold top mushrooms growing, in the paddock where the cows were. And he wasn't there one week, and he was sort of totally fine with me going up there trying them or whatever. But I got on my motorbike and rode all the way up there through the bush tracks and picked these mushrooms, went into his house and boiled some water, put the mushroom stems in, took the tops off from and got a potato masher, mashed them up a bit, put a tea bag in, and then drank it down, sort of waited, and absolutely nothing happened. And I'm like, no, this is useless. So I get on my motorbike and ride half an hour back home again. The next Saturday I go up there again and I do it again. And this time when I picked them, the stems were considered like I picked them and sort of pulled the stems open. And
Mm.
the previous week they'd been like a light purple color. And this week they were like such a dark purple color, they were almost black. And
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, these must be a bit stronger. So I've put them in and I've really got the potato masher out this time. Like I've really mashed them up hard. And like to me, the dose was probably now 100 times stronger than the week before. Got the tea bag in, put it in to get a bit of flavor in there, drank it down. Oh, I've never touched them since. I was went off the charts. Like it was just, to actually be with someone and to have a dosage so you knew like this is so many milligrams or whatever, like would just be life changing. Like it's just, that was at 14. I'm now 61 and I have not touched mushrooms since. I learned a
Oh
valuable
yeah.
lesson. Yeah, I thought
I think
it's 8 hours
yeah.
seemed in like it was 80 years. And I thought I was going to be in a straitjacket, locked away in an asylum for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many things you're saying there. Obviously, I don't recommend these things for minors and children, of
Mm,
course.
mm.
Having said that, as intense an experience as you're describing, you're okay, right? So this
Yeah.
is
Oh,
not
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
it's not an
yeah.
endorsement by any means, but you're not going you won't kill you, right? I mean, like you're
Mm,
so that's just something to acknowledge. And in general, psychedelics are not toxic. So even monstrously heavy doses are not going to have any long lasting physical permanent impact
mm,
on anybody. So they have been described in all of the current clinical trials going on as being freakishly safe.
mm.
Again, of course, when you have no experience, not to do on your own,
Yeah.
especially, any of them. And some I would not do now without, like ayahuasca cannot be done without it. There's such a spiritual component to ayahuasca and the integration of music and singing and drumming. It's a very traditional medicine. And so that must be done um, with under the observation and guidance of a medicine person or a shaman who really has been trained usually for years in the medicine as an ayahuasquero before they usually make their way back to the States now and will start to serve the medicine. So a lot of it comes with a lot of experience. Now, all of like psychedelics aren't like that. You could take acid on your own. If you're experienced, you could take, mushrooms. Um, I don't take mushrooms anymore in a recreational setting. I had done that for a bit a number of years ago, and so with some varying success, but you cannot really control the dosage
Mm,
and what's exactly in the batch of mushrooms that you are taking. And then it's very hard to determine, like you can't really set the what the expectations are. Sometimes I've had very little impact from what I thought was like a decent dose. And then other times I've had like what seemed like a very heavy dose, although it wasn't. And so it can be very hit and miss that way. And you don't know. The other thing is certain mushroom strains have a lot more psilocybin content than
mm,
others. So you really kind of have to know what you're doing there with the mushrooms to be more educated about it. But even then, I started not to get enjoyable experiences or experiences that were too intense recreationally. And then I just decided that I am not going to use the mushroom in a recreational setting any longer, and that my experience with them would just be on a intensive, purposeful journey experience in the right set and setting that you hear people talk about all the time. And you
mm,
definitely need the right set and setting. And so while mushrooms are now proliferating in the States recreationally now because they're so easy to grow,
mm,
I choose not to do that. And so, people to each their own, and people are enjoying them recreationally. I just got to a place where I couldn't experience that any longer, and I'm no longer trying. Psychedelics for me are more of a journey based kind of experience, either by myself or with some supervision, with a sitter. Sometimes that's just how I choose to use them at this
mm.
point in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like at 14, we'd been used to save our friends and I, we'd save our lunch money up so that on the weekend we'd go and buy half a bottle of rum. Because in Australia, you could drink at 18. And we used to
Right.
have a lot of these drive-through bottle shops. And we would sit across the road in the park and wait till there was no customers in there. And one of us would run across the road and sort of like say to the attendant, like, oh, half a bottle of Bacardi rum or whatever, and most of the time they'd look at you like, you idiot, give us your money, and they'd put it in a brown paper bag and go, get out of here, and we'd run back across the road. So 4 out of 5 times we would get it. And then we'd sit in the park and get drunk. But, that took all week for all of us to save our lunch money up, go hungry, and combine it together to get this, and then we'd sort of, you'd throw up in the park or whatever. So it was, there was this financial thing. And then we got onto some marijuana. Well, it cost money too. So now I've got the opportunity.
Yeah.
There's mushrooms and they're free. like, and they, they're like way better than booze or so we'd heard. And so yeah, this is free. So the first time it's free and didn't do a thing, and then the second time, yeah, it's like anyway,
Oh yeah.
it was.
If one of the world most renowned mycologists now, famous guy, Paul Stamets, he's the really the I don't want to say face of like mushrooms today, but he is for more or less, and he's doing phenomenal work in the development of mushrooms as a medicine to treat a lot of physical, mental, and emotional conditions. But he describes when he was a child, he had a similar experience, and I think he was even younger than 14, but maybe a young teenager. And he took an immense amount of mushrooms. And as a child, he had a profound stutter. And in this experience, he took like 9 grams of mushrooms, he's saying, which is tremendous. And he said it relieved him of the stutter, which is remarkable. It raises a lot of questions about what the mechanism of action that the mushrooms do and other psychedelics in terms of how they're able to rewire the brain.
Mm,
I'm not making any claims on that. There's obviously a lot of science going on. I'm not a scientist. But in my subjective experience, they can be extraordinarily healing in so many different ways. I think that the mushrooms in particular are a form of intelligence. And I'm out there on a limb. I know when I say that and when people hear that, but experiences I've had have been so mystical, encounters with entities. Obviously there's no proof there, right? In terms of, well, are you hallucinating this? All I can say is I've had physical benefits that have come of it, and I've had encounters that have given me these profound healing experiences, like we started out with ayahuasca. That I do believe that these plant medicines are a form of intelligence. Part of my work now is um, into the alien phenomenon and how psychedelics are a bridge or a tool or a gateway into the alien phenomenon, what that actually is, and how they can give us an ability to communicate. But I believe that they also have this ability to help us heal ourselves. And you can just hear anecdotal accounts of how they work. So they're magical.
mm. And maybe at 14 I got what I needed because I was a bit of a daredevil. I used to race motorbikes and like I was looking for a buzz or a thrill, and maybe I'd have gone on to other types of drugs that were addictive. So I got that big shock, and
Oh yeah,
yeah, I mean, I still smoked a little bit of marijuana after that, but not much. And then at 18, or probably, yeah, around 18, once it became legal to drink, I kind of stopped.
yeah,
It was like
yeah.
it wasn't like fun anymore, because I used to ride my motorbike on the road and the police would chase me and I'd always get away. I just once I was allowed to do it, I had a motorbike. Once I got my driver's license, I had the motorbike for 6 weeks and I sold it. And I'd had one since I was
Wow.
11. Yeah, and just bought a car. Like it was, the buzz of that was gone. And like I say, once I was illegally allowed to drink, I barely did it again. It was like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
looking for,
there
yeah,
is that, no
yeah,
doubt. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, when you've had that kind of the so-called bad trip, and I don't like to use that term, but it can be so powerful. The mushrooms will take you to school, and like there's no way out of it. So that's why I say like ayahuasca or a real mushroom journey. The reason I make that comparison to sort of the microcosm of life is because there's no way out. You make this decision, you make a commitment, and you have to see it through. There's no way out but through. And so there is a lesson in that in and of itself, but especially as a kid, and I've had some tremendously difficult experiences, but I don't like to label them as bad. Hard, no doubt. but fruitful and ultimately, when you learn lessons, which is the purpose of going into these experiences, the learning part is hard, frequently very difficult. Confronting things is very difficult. So while the experience can put fear into you, which is the natural human response for the ego to be able to hold on, defend yourself, not want to be exposed to this, you're feeling a change in consciousness that is very uncomfortable frequently. So I always say going into these journeys is not pleasant. Like it's not a recreational experience. You're going into something that you know is likely to be difficult, sometimes can be wonderful, but frequently difficult. And so, like anything, learning comes from work. It comes from exertion, and it comes from working through pain and confronting these things. But when looking back on it, can be the most profound experience. Going through it, very, very hard. So that's what I say. It's hard. What I tell people, in actuality, the most difficult thing that you should anticipate in a psychedelic journey to encounter is the truth, because the truth is often the thing that your ego-based existence in 3D reality doesn't deal with. We
Mm.
have defense mechanisms, we put it away. That's why they're buried in the subconscious. But when the mushroom or the other psychedelic, the other medicine, which I'll refer to them as, when they bring this up and they say, hey, David, hey, Doug, it's time for you to sit down. You're going to go through this and we're going to figure this out. You probably don't want to do that at that point, but you're forced. And so there is no way out. You will come through it, oftentimes better, and you'll look back on it with the most loving and positive experience. But yeah, but that's what it is. So the truth, it's you don't go into these things unless you want to grow and learn.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a recreational fun experience. That is a invalid expectation, right? You may experience times of sheer bliss, which I have had, but the learning part is really what they're suited for, and as teachers, as intelligence, as I have said. So that's just that's my piece of advice for people to consider. And these are the things I talk about in my content.
Yeah. And I've always found, like you used the word there a couple of times, hard. It's hard to do. And I find,
Oh,
a couple of days ago, I just decided as soon as I woke up that morning, I just thought I'm going to fast today for a day. And, people could ask you, like, why would you do it? Well, like, da, 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 da. And there's a lot of different, there's a lot of different reasons to do it. But one of the reasons, because it's hard. It's like it's hard to do. At the moment, what was it, 8 or 9, probably 9 months ago, last winter, I decided to learn to swim. I always lived near the ocean. We live in a hot climate. I've always gone into swimming pools, but I, I I want to be able to go and swim in the ocean, like out behind the waves. We've got beautiful surf, some of the top 5, 10% surfing beaches in the world, 20-minute drive from my house. They have all these world-class champion, competitions there. And on a day when it's relatively calm, I want to go. I go into the waves now, and I'll body surf in. Like go up to sort of my chest and then surf in. But I wanted to be able to go out. So middle of last winter, I had 3 swimming lessons as a 60-year-old, for the first time. Because at school, in summer, they would put us in a bus and take us to the local swimming pool, and everyone would have lessons. But I was shit scared. And I just, there's 30 kids and one teacher, and it's very easy to slip through the cracks and not get out there and have to try and put your head under the water. And I just never did it. And, or I knew it was going to happen, and I'd pretend to be sick and not go to school that day or whatever. And so it's really hard. And finally, this like I would swim. I get in the 25-meter pool and I'd do one lap. And I'd stop and rest and breathe hard, and then like have 30-second break and then do another lap. And just this week I've conquered it. I've done 4 days in a row where I've done 10 laps non-stop. And I'm sort of,
great.
and I don't know if you swear enough, David, but it's fucking hard. Like,
I do.
mate, it, and for the first couple of months doing one lap, I was sprinting as hard as I could. And it took me 6 months to realize what I was doing. I was scared the whole time. And my whole goal was to get to the other end of the pool and stop. And I'd be gasping for air at the other end. And like, you know, and that's why I was doing it because I was afraid. And
Yes.
whereas my goal now is like, because I've got a mentor who's a world champion lifesaver who lives up the road, and he's going to take me out. And but he said, Doug, you've got to be able to do at least 200 meters non-stop. Like like before I take you out, you can't just do 25 meters and have a 30-second break because that doesn't work out in the ocean. So finally this week cracked it, and
That's great.
yeah,
Good for you.
but
Good
it's
for you.
bloody hard. Um,
Yeah.
but it makes me feel better and other things. So taking psychedelics and doing stuff like this, it's really hard. But as I've heard Joe Rogan say, when you do hard things, it makes reverse parking really easy. You know,
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
funny.
you just got to
You're
do
right.
some hard stuff and it makes other things easier. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's about, taking control of the situation, going in to try to face your fears. It's so rewarding when you can conquer these things. And it's wonderful that you can do that at any point in your life. It's never too late. And and the point you make about the sacrifice and the work and how hard it can be, it's wonderful to challenge yourself about that. And the other thing is, here's one thing I like to tell people: do not get sidetracked about what's going on with other people. That you are in a race of one in this life, and this projection that we're in this with everybody, and the easy thing to do is to compare yourself, and that the old saying that comparison is the thief of joy is so apropos, because you feel like you're never good enough. You're trying to measure yourself against others, and you want to learn to swim. That's your own personal challenge. Overcome that. Wonderful. Can I get 100 meters? Can I get 200 meters? And all that matters is your own self improvement. That's the most rewarding thing. And like, look how rewarding it feels for you to be able to overcome that and to get into the ocean. Does it matter now that you're not going to do the Ironman, or you're going to swim 5 miles? It's irrelevant, right? That's not your journey. But look what you've been able to overcome and improve. And the other thing physically is there should be a focus on the physical body as the vessel. And I think in so many things in life and in plant medicine as well, the healthier and cleaner your body is, the physical vessel, the more connected you will be to the spiritual experience that is to come. And the focus on the body is of utmost importance. The body is such a magical thing. My fundamental belief is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We are having a temporary experience in this body, and I believe we've had many, many hundreds, if not more, of these experiences. Nonetheless, I never want to detract from the importance and the godlike nature, if you will, of this particular physical experience that we're having. That there is nothing actually more important than this life. Even if we have had hundreds of them, none is as important or more important than the one we have here. And so to be able to kind of live in that duality where you cherish every moment of this physical existence, yet understand that there may very well be a lot more to come, and that this isn't fundamental reality, may seem ironic on one level, but I've been learning to coexist in the duality of these two concepts, and that has improved my life dramatically. If you can find the magic in walking down aisle 9 at the market, you are starting to learn something. If you can appreciate waiting in line at the Department of Motor Vehicles, you're starting to learn the wonder of life and the beautiful lesson of presence in this moment which is an ayahuasca lesson that I had learned. And it beat it out of me to the point where, learning presence, that this moment is the only thing we have, is a wonderful thing. And if you can take that into everyday life, you've made it.
Yeah. When we used to live overseas years ago, we would, go anywhere we went, we were on an aeroplane and we were on like an island hopper flight. It's halfway between Guam and Hawaii. So if you went anywhere, if we went back to Australia, we had 5 flights. And you get in immigration lines, and they used to like annoy the heck out of me, especially after 9/11 and the shoe bomber and all that stuff. You got to take your shoes off and your belt off, be in these long lines, and I used to get aggravated, and that would then lower my immune system, and I'd catch a head cold every time I travel. I'd get a head cold, and then eventually one day I got the headphones, and I pop the headphones on, put Bob Marley or Fleetwood Mac or something on, and I did it deliberately, like zone out from the vibe that was in there. And then I'm like, dude, just make the line longer because I'm really enjoying this music. Like I don't really care anymore. And so I was being present, I was creating my own little bubble in the line. And then I'd get about 4 or 5 people from the immigration agent or the security or whatever. And then I just put a big smile on the dial, and I'm thinking, I'm going to go out of my way to make this person smile. Like I'm not going to annoy them, but I'm going to just, it's like it was just, and so and did I get sick? No, because in the beginning I was
Oh,
putting it down to, oh, I'm around all these different people, and there's so many people together in the plane and in these lines, and like I'm catching because someone in there had a cold, and I could no, it's I let my immune system, I let my guard down. Now I'm in my own presence, and yeah, it's just the world's just so much. It's 1,000 times more pleasant when you change. You take a checkup from the neck up. Yeah, it's about
for
me.
sure.
Me, I've got to sort myself out, and life will be
It
better.
seems so simple, but it's such a, I think, you've learned how to do that over time because you get better at life as we go. Like, so we all do. We learn, and that's where wisdom comes from. The youth is wasted on the young. Um, so it's great to hear you talk about these kind of things, and because we cannot control all of these externalities, what we can control is how we respond,
Yeah,
and our life will be dramatically improved if we do that. Now, the other component to that is that as I've learned these things, I I get back into the rut of doing the things that I had done habitually wrong in years past as well. So the expectation that you're going to have this plant medicine experience or many of these experiences and that you're going to be a forever improved person or some guru, that's not it. That's not it. What you are is the same human person that you've always been, with all of your frailties and the some of the negative habits and things that you do, but you now have this gift of time and wisdom and some of the tools that I have taken from these journeys, and you certainly don't need to do that. Like you've learned these things without them, but to then be able to recognize that your reaction could be better to this, or you're doing the thing that you always do that doesn't serve you well, and not judge yourself about that, but say that's okay. At least now I can step outside, realize what I'm doing, then take out the tool, like the toolbox that I've assembled from all of my experiences, and say, let me apply this tool to this experience. I know it will make me better, and then change your behavior. Then you change your energy, you change the feeling, and then the world changes around you, right?
yeah,
But it's never about being perfect. It's just about trying to be more conscious of the changes that you can make and impact the world to your benefit. And who doesn't want to do that?
exactly. It's like a
Yeah.
miracle. It's yeah, check out from the neck up, you change, and the world changes. Yeah. And now, like me standing in a long line is like 95% of the time now is just like a no-brainer. I don't need the headphones on anymore. It's such a minor thing. It's just like I'll get into this line and I'll think, oh, is there a shorter line? No, this is oh, okay, zip, like it's over, like boom, and then whereas before it was like, oh, it was just a big thing. It was a drudgery. I just blew it so out of proportion. Um, yeah, yeah, and now
That's
it's
it.
it's the opposite. Yes,
You,
simple
you
thing. Yeah.
remind me there's a really interesting Netflix series that only ran for one season, I think, called the Midnight Gospel,
And I
and
didn't
it
hear of
is
that one.
okay. Check it out. The Midnight Gospel. Duncan Trussell is the creator.
Mm-hmm.
It is an animated series, but it's very deep and profound. And what he does is he integrates um, podcast guests um, um, into the show, which is of course animated, but you're hearing the voices and parts of the conversation that come out of it, and you don't know this on the time as you're watching it, but if you look into the show, and they talk about philosophy, really deep things. One of these episodes has a guy that was wrongly convicted of a murder and imprisoned for years, and physical abuse, all kinds of horrible experience. You can't imagine anything worse. He develops this meditation practice that he's able to do, and he says after learning how to do this, that the confines of his prison cell that he's been in for years, wrongly convicted, on top of everything else, he was able to, like, almost the cell was able floating away, and he was able to see it more of as a launch tower to be able to propel himself in a meditative state out into these unbelievable experiences. So for people to say, "Oh, it's so hard for me to do that," no, you can do anything if this guy can do it. Um, it's a great show. I don't think they're making another season, but it's very adult, as I've said. The references are so smart. It's a very
Mm.
smart show. He's been on Rogan too, Duncan
Yeah,
Trussell. If
yeah,
anyone wants
I
to,
know the
yeah,
name.
you've heard. Yeah, he's a really interesting guy. Had a whole lot of different psychedelic experiences. Not necessarily in this like journey way, but like in some shitty little apartment, like in Hollywood, like in Los Angeles, like just interesting experiences. A great guy. So that's
Uh,
just what you made me think
I'm
of.
trying to remember. Has he got a bit of a funny voice?
Oh yeah, really
Yeah,
high.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That, yeah, I know.
totally,
Yeah, yeah. So
totally.
I wrote down the midnight, and I forgot the last bit. What was the last bit of the name of it?
Gospel.
Gospel.
Yeah,
Okay.
the Midnight Gospel. So
Okay.
like each of the, I think there's a six or so episodes. They're not linear in any way.
Hmm.
So I think the one I'm referring to, because it was happened to be my favorite, was episode three. But I recommend just watching like all of them if you can get there. If you're a little, you have a little drink in you,
Yeah.
or a little alcohol, or a little weed or something like that, it might make it a little more interesting. I have
Could
to say.
enhance it.
Yeah, I could a little bit. I've watched a couple of these under the influence of certain compounds. Nonetheless, you don't need anything profound experiences with some really interesting people. I throw that out there.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put your contact details, etc., like in the show notes. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to mention?
I, you know, So what I'm doing now in terms of the business is we are setting up journey experiences. My partner in this, William Henry, is one of the guest producers, contributors on the panel of the hit show Ancient Aliens that airs on the History Channel here, but it's carried all over the world, on different networks. Um, William really is steeped in religious expertise, and that's his contribution to the show. And so we're exploring the alien phenomenon, as I referred to earlier, but also giving people these plant medicine experiences. So obviously, legality is a significant top of the line issue. So we're setting up experiences where they are legal in Mexico, in Costa Rica, to a lesser extent here, like in Sedona, where marijuana is legal only. But there are experiences all over. And so I would encourage people to look into the Starwalker Cafe, which is the entry point for our education. where you can have talks and lecture series, hear interviews and some podcasts. But that will also be the place to be able to connect, to take some of these journeys, and to let people know that if you are inclined to investigate some of these experiences, and I don't know in detail about Australia, of course, but everywhere here in the States and a lot of other countries, there are very safe and trained facilitators who can offer these plant experiences to people who are so inclined. And so it's out there if you want to investigate it. And I encourage people who are curious to start to look and research some of this content and to understand that while religion may be an inhibitor for some people to look into these experiences, my suggestion is that not only may they not be, that they don't present the inhibitions that people think they are, but that these magical elixirs and compounds have been the staple of a lot of the world's religions, going back to antiquity, that a lot of people aren't aware of. So if you want to look to your, religious person to inquire about some of these things, I think that could provide a lot of experience or a lot of education and information if someone is so inclined to go on one of these journeys.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Yeah,
really good info.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think you've given those who are listening a lot to think about. And yeah, and like I say, if they feel called, they'll know whether they feel called to it or
And
not.
and and if you have my contact information here, this
Yeah,
is what I'm open to. So I'm a one point of light, right? We're all just our individual points of light. But the way I'm using the technology now, and the algorithms are, if people see these and you have people in your audience that are going to hear this, then I can amplify that message this way. I
yeah,
am not the message, right? But I have seen a little bit of the way. And if people are inclined, please reach out for me. I'd be happy to give you some information. My content is just that. It's just a place for people to be able to address some of these questions, and be able then to take it on themselves to do their own work and research to get onto that path if it is right for them.
okay, excellent. Thank you for
Yeah,
your time, David. That's been a great message for everyone.
my pleasure. It's been so good. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Well, we're at the end of another thought provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition, it will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.